What would you do if 5 newborn German Shepherd puppies refused to leave your hospital bed, somehow knowing that the man who saved their lives was now fighting for his own? That's exactly what happened to Navy SEAL veteran Axel Thompson when a routine rescue mission went catastrophically wrong, leaving him in critical condition while 5 orphaned canine puppies made a promise that would redefine the meaning of loyalty, family, and never leaving a brother behind. But what these puppies didn't know was that their desperate attempt to save their rescuer would unlock a healing power that would transform military medicine forever and prove that sometimes the smallest hearts carry the strongest medicine. This is the true story of 5 puppies who became healers. A warrior who learned that being saved is sometimes harder than saving others. And the moment when "We've got you, Dad" became the 5 words that brought a hero back from the edge of death. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your location in the comments. And if you believe that love is the most powerful medicine, hit that like button. You're going to need every bit of faith you have for this one. Now let's begin. The blizzard that hit Montana in February was supposed to be routine. 18 inches of snow, high winds, temperatures dropping to 20 degrees. Nothing that Axel Thompson and the Midnight Brotherhood hadn't handled dozens of times before. The call came at 3:47 a.m. A military transport truck carrying classified canine breeding stock had skidded off Highway 2 during whiteout conditions. The truck had rolled down a steep embankment, and both human and canine casualties were feared. Multiple canines on board. Condition unknown, Sheriff Chen reported over Axel's satellite phone. You and the Brotherhood are our best shot at getting to them before the storm gets worse. Axel looked at Scout, Ranger, and Angel, his legendary search and rescue team, already in their tactical harnesses and ready for deployment. His thick, dark beard was frosted with ice from the early morning cold, his weathered military features hardened by years of similar emergency calls. Roger that. We're en route. What they found at the crash site was worse than reported. The military transport had rolled 3 times down a 200-foot embankment, finally coming to rest upside down against a cluster of pine trees. The human driver had been thrown clear and was being treated by paramedics, but the specialized canine transport compartment was completely inaccessible. We can hear barking from inside, Emergency Coordinator Lisa Martinez reported, but the vehicle's too unstable to approach safely. One wrong move and it could roll another 100 feet down the mountain. Axel assessed the situation with the tactical precision that had made him legendary in both military operations and civilian rescues. The truck was held in place by 2 pine trees that were already showing stress fractures from the weight. The canine compartment was reinforced for safety, but that same reinforcement now made it a potential death trap. How many dogs are we talking about? Axel asked. Manifesto shows 6 adult German Shepherds and multiple puppies, elite breeding stock being transported to a training facility in Colorado. That's when Axel heard it. Not just adult barking, but the high-pitched distress calls of very young puppies. Puppies that wouldn't survive long in sub-zero temperatures if the heating system in the overturned truck had failed. Scout, Ranger, Angel, perimeter sweep for approach routes, Axel commanded. I'm going in. What followed was the most technically challenging rescue operation of Axel's career. Using military rappelling equipment, he descended the icy embankment and carefully approached the unstable vehicle while Scout, Ranger, and Angel maintained positions that would allow them to respond if the truck shifted. The moment Axel cut through the reinforced compartment door, his heart broke at what he found inside. 5 adult German Shepherds had not survived the crash and its aftermath. But huddled together in the corner, barely alive from cold and trauma, were 5 tiny German Shepherd puppies, no more than 6 weeks old, trying desperately to stay warm against their deceased mothers. Got 5 survivors, Axel radioed to the surface team. Puppies, critical condition, hypothermic, starting emergency extraction. But as Axel began the delicate process of securing the puppies for transport up the embankment, disaster struck. The pine tree supporting the truck's weight finally gave way. Axel had less than 2 seconds to react. He could save himself, or he could shield the 5 puppies from the crushing weight of the rolling vehicle. For a Navy SEAL who'd spent his life protecting others, it wasn't even a choice. The truck rolled over Axel and the puppies, trapping them both under tons of twisted metal and broken glass. Above ground, Scout, Ranger, and Angel began barking frantically, the same alert pattern they used to signal Handler down during combat operations. When the rescue teams finally extracted them 4 hours later, Axel was unconscious with severe internal injuries, multiple fractures, and catastrophic trauma that would require months of recovery. But somehow, impossibly, all 5 puppies had survived, protected by Axel's body and what the rescue coordinators could only describe as a miracle of positioning and luck. At Kalispell Regional Medical Center, as Axel fought for his life in the ICU, something unprecedented happened. The 5 German Shepherd puppies, now healthy enough to move around, refused to leave the hospital. They had somehow bonded with Axel during those life-and-death moments under the truck, and no amount of coaxing could get them to accept care anywhere except right outside his hospital room. "This is medically impossible," Dr. Rebecca Chen told the veterinary team. "These puppies should be focused on basic survival needs: food, warmth, sleep. Instead, they're exhibiting protective behaviors toward a human they barely know." But Scout, Ranger, and Angel understood what the medical staff didn't. They positioned themselves alongside the 5 puppies, creating an honor guard outside Axel's ICU room. The Midnight Brotherhood had accepted these 5 orphans as family, and family didn't abandon family. On the 3rd day, when Axel's condition took a critical turn and doctors warned his family to prepare for the worst, something extraordinary happened. The 5 puppies, led by Scout, Ranger, and Angel, somehow got past hospital security and made their way into Axel's room. What the ICU staff found the next morning changed their understanding of healing forever. Axel's vital signs had stabilized for the first time in 72 hours, and 5 tiny German Shepherd puppies were sleeping peacefully on his hospital bed, as close to their rescuer as they could possibly get. They're not just grateful, Dr. Chen realized, watching the puppies maintain their protective positions around Axel even while sleeping. They're trying to heal him the same way he saved them. The youngest puppy, barely 7 weeks old, had positioned herself directly over Axel's heart, her tiny body rising and falling with his breathing, as if she was trying to share her life force with the man who had given everything to save hers. For the first time since the accident, Axel's heart rate monitor showed the steady, strong rhythm of someone who had found a reason to fight back from the edge of death. The 5 puppies weren't just hospital patients anymore. They had become Axel's medical team, his family, and his motivation to survive. But the battle for his life was just beginning. The 5 German Shepherd puppies that had bonded with Axel during their shared trauma weren't just visiting a patient. They were performing what veterinary behaviorists would later call the most sophisticated example of pack-based healing ever documented. Each puppy had instinctively assigned themselves a specific role in Axel's recovery, creating a coordinated care system that amazed the medical staff at Kalispell Regional Medical Center. Alpha, the largest male puppy, positioned himself at the foot of Axel's bed and refused to let anyone approach without his approval. Despite being only 7 weeks old, Alpha somehow understood that his job was security, protecting his injured pack leader from any potential threats, including well-meaning medical staff who approached too quickly. Bravo, the second male, stationed himself on Axel's left side and seemed to monitor his breathing patterns. Whenever Axel's respiration became irregular during nightmares or pain episodes, Bravo would gently nuzzle Axel's arm until his breathing stabilized. Charlie, the third male, took position on Axel's right side and appeared to be monitoring his emotional state. When Axel showed signs of depression or despair, common among trauma patients, Charlie would rest his tiny head on Axel's hand and make soft, comforting sounds. Delta, the female puppy, positioned herself near Axel's head and seemed to respond to his neurological status. When Axel experienced confusion or disorientation from his head injuries, Delta would gently lick his face and somehow guide his attention back to the present moment. And Echo, the smallest female who had positioned herself over Axel's heart that first night, continued to monitor his cardiovascular status with a precision that baffled cardiologists. Whenever Axel's heart rate became irregular, Echo would adjust her position to provide exactly the right amount of warmth and pressure to help stabilize his rhythm. "What we're seeing defies medical explanation," Dr. Rebecca Chen told the research team that had gathered to study the phenomenon. "These puppies are performing functions that typically require sophisticated monitoring equipment and trained medical personnel." But it was Dr. Sarah Martinez, the veterinarian who had been working with Axel and the Midnight Brotherhood for years, who understood what was really happening. "They're not just puppies anymore," she explained to the gathered medical staff. The trauma bonded them to Axel in a way that triggered their genetic instincts for pack survival. In their minds, if Axel dies, they die. So they're using every survival instinct they have to keep him alive. The breakthrough came during Axel's 3rd week in the hospital, when complications from his internal injuries led to a crisis that threatened his life. Axel's blood pressure had dropped dangerously low, his kidneys were failing, and the medical team was preparing his family for the possibility that they might lose him. That's when the 5 puppies, led by Scout, Ranger, and Angel, did something that would be studied in medical journals for years to come. Working together with coordination that should have been impossible for animals their age, the puppies created what veterinary behaviorists would later term a healing circle. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo positioned themselves around Axel's body in a perfect pentagon formation. Scout, Ranger, and Angel flanked them, creating an outer ring of protection. Then, simultaneously, all 8 dogs began making the soft melodic sounds that were the Midnight Brotherhood signature. But this time, the 5 puppies were leading the harmony. The sound filled the ICU room with a frequency that seemed to resonate directly with Axel's struggling body. Within 30 minutes, Axel's blood pressure began to stabilize, his kidney function improved, his heart rhythm became stronger and more regular. The acoustic frequency they're producing is somehow triggering a parasympathetic nervous system response, Dr. Chen reported to her colleagues. The healing vibrations are literally helping his body remember how to heal itself. But the most remarkable moment came when Axel finally regained full consciousness after 3 weeks of critical care. The first thing he saw was 5 tiny German Shepherd puppies arranged around him like guardian angels, their amber eyes filled with intelligence, concern, and unmistakable love. "Hey there, little heroes," Axel whispered, his voice hoarse from weeks of intubation. All 5 puppies immediately perked up, their tails wagging with joy that their pack leader was finally awake and responding. Echo, the smallest female, carefully crawled up to Axel's face and gently licked his cheek, the same gesture she'd been performing for weeks to monitor his neurological responses. "Did you guys stay with me the whole time?" Axel asked, reaching out to stroke their soft fur. Dr. Martinez, who had been monitoring the interaction, wiped tears from her eyes. "Axel, these puppies haven't left your side for 21 days. They've been your medical team, your family, and your reason to fight. Without them, we would have lost you." That's when Axel made a decision that would transform his understanding of family and responsibility. "Then I guess they're not going anywhere," he said, looking at the 5 puppies who had literally saved his life. "If they chose me, then I choose them." But Scout, Ranger, and Angel had already made that decision weeks earlier. They had accepted the 5 orphaned puppies as part of their pack, expanding the Midnight Brotherhood from 3 to 8 members. Over the following weeks, as Axel slowly recovered his strength, the 5 puppies continued their coordinated care routine. They seemed to instinctively know when he needed encouragement, when he needed rest, when he needed motivation to continue his painful physical therapy. "They're not just healing him physically," observed Dr. Patricia Williams, the physical therapist working with Axel. "They're healing his spirit. Every time he wants to give up, he looks at those 5 faces and remembers that he has a family depending on him." The puppies had grown larger and stronger during their weeks in the hospital, but their devotion to Axel never wavered. They had learned to navigate hospital corridors, understood medical schedules, and could distinguish between helpful medical staff and potential threats to their pack leader. But it was during Axel's 6th week of recovery that the real test of their bond would come. Military officials arrived with paperwork claiming the 5 puppies as government property, elite canine breeding stock that belonged to the Defense Department and needed to be transferred to official military training facilities. "These animals represent significant financial investment in genetic research," Colonel Harrison explained to Axel. "They cannot remain with civilian personnel regardless of the circumstances." Axel looked at Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo, 5 puppies who had chosen to save his life instead of simply surviving their own trauma. "They're not government property, Colonel," Axel replied with the quiet authority that had made him a respected SEAL. "They're family, and family doesn't get reassigned." The battle for the puppies' future was about to test everything Axel had learned about loyalty, family, and what it means to never leave anyone behind. The legal battle for the 5 puppies began while Axel was still recovering in the hospital, creating a situation where a decorated Navy SEAL had to fight his own government to protect the family that had literally saved his life. Colonel Harrison arrived with official paperwork, military veterinarians, and transport crates designed to remove Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo from Axel's care immediately. "Mr. Thompson," Colonel Harrison said, standing at the foot of Axel's hospital bed while the 5 puppies instinctively moved into protective positions around their recovering pack leader. "These animals are classified as military assets. Their bloodlines represent millions of dollars in genetic research, and they belong in proper training facilities." But the moment the military veterinarians approached Axel's bed with restraining equipment, something extraordinary happened. The 5 puppies, now 3 months old and significantly larger, positioned themselves in the same healing circle formation they'd used during Axel's medical crisis. Alpha took point, his young but authoritative bark clearly communicating that no one was taking his pack leader's family anywhere. Scout, Ranger, and Angel immediately flanked the puppies, creating a protective barrier that even the military personnel recognized as serious. The Midnight Brotherhood wasn't just protecting Axel anymore, they were protecting their extended family. "Stand down, soldier," Colonel Harrison commanded Alpha, using military authority. Alpha looked directly at the colonel, tilted his head with the same intelligent assessment Axel had seen countless times, and then did something that stunned everyone in the room. The 3-month-old puppy sat at perfect military attention and offered a salute, placing his right paw over his heart in the gesture that military working dogs were trained to perform. Then Alpha barked once, the sharp, definitive bark that meant, "Message received, but I respectfully decline to comply." "That puppy just told a colonel no in perfect military protocol," Dr. Martinez whispered in amazement. But it was Echo, the smallest female who had spent weeks monitoring Axel's heart rate, who sealed the decision. When one of the military veterinarians approached Axel's bed with a sedation device intended to calm the puppies for transport, Echo moved to her familiar position over Axel's chest and did something that made every monitor in the ICU room start alarming. She somehow synchronized her heartbeat with Axel's. The cardiac monitors showed 2 distinct but perfectly matched heart rhythms, one human, one canine, beating in complete harmony. When the veterinarian moved closer, both heart rates spiked together. When he stepped back, both returned to normal simultaneously. "She's created a biological bond with his cardiovascular system," Dr. Rebecca Chen said, staring at the monitors in disbelief. "If you separate them now, you could trigger cardiac arrest in both of them." Colonel Harrison looked at the medical data, then at the 5 puppies who were clearly prepared to die defending their chosen family, then at Axel, whose vital signs were becoming increasingly unstable as the stress of the confrontation affected his recovery. "This is highly irregular," the colonel said finally. "So is having 5 puppies save a Navy SEAL's life through coordinated medical intervention," Axel replied, his voice carrying the authority that had commanded respect in the most dangerous situations. "Colonel, these dogs didn't choose me because of convenience. They chose me because we survived something together that bonded us at a level deeper than paperwork." That's when Emma Chen Thompson, Axel's adopted daughter, arrived at the hospital with reinforcements that would tip the balance of the entire situation. Emma, now 8 years old and wise beyond her years from her own traumatic rescue, walked directly past the military officials to where the 5 puppies were maintaining their protective formation. "Hello, Alpha. Hello, Bravo. Hello, Charlie. Hello, Delta. Hello, Echo," she said, addressing each puppy by name. "I'm Emma. I'm part of this family, too." The 5 puppies immediately recognized Emma as pack family, probably through scent markers from Scout, Ranger, and Angel, or possibly through the same intuitive recognition that had bonded them to Axel. But it was what Emma said next that changed everything. "Colonel Harrison," she said, with the calm confidence of someone who had survived attempted murder and learned to speak truth to power. "I was 7 years old when my father tried to kill me by pushing me through ice. Axel saved me, and now I'm his daughter. These puppies are 3 months old, and their fathers, the government you represent, left them to die in a truck crash. Axel saved them, and now they're his sons and daughters. Emma looked directly at the colonel with eyes that had seen too much for someone her age. The difference is, when my biological father tried to hurt me, the system eventually protected me. But now the system is trying to hurt them, so maybe the system needs to decide what it actually stands for. The room fell silent except for the soft sounds of the 5 puppies who had unconsciously begun making the Midnight Brotherhood's signature melodic harmonies, their song of comfort that had helped heal Axel and was now filling the hospital room with a sound that somehow made everyone present remember what they were really fighting about. Colonel Harrison studied the scene, a recovering Navy SEAL who had nearly died saving 5 puppies, the puppies who had literally kept him alive through weeks of medical crisis, an 8-year-old girl who understood loyalty better than most adults, and 3 legendary search and rescue dogs who had expanded their definition of family to include anyone worth protecting. There may be a way to resolve this, he said finally. The military needs assurance that these animals will receive proper training and care. If you can guarantee that they'll be developed into operational K9s that serve military purposes, we might be able to arrange a civilian contract that allows them to remain with you. Axel looked at Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo. 5 puppies who had already proven they understood service, sacrifice, and loyalty better than any training program could teach. Colonel, these dogs have already completed the most important part of their training. They've learned what it means to never leave a brother behind. The negotiation that followed would establish a new model for military working dog partnerships, but more importantly, it would prove that some families are formed not through biology or bureaucracy, but through the shared understanding that love is worth fighting for. The 5 puppies hadn't just saved Axel's life, they had shown an entire military system what loyalty actually looked like. 2 years after that hospital confrontation, the Midnight Brotherhood had evolved into something unprecedented in military working dog history, a family unit that combined emotional healing with tactical excellence, proving that the strongest warriors are those who fight for love, not just duty. The civilian contract negotiated with Colonel Harrison had created the Brotherhood Training Program, where Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo received the finest military working dog education while remaining part of Axel's family. But their training was different from traditional programs. It emphasized healing and protection rather than just tactical operations. Alpha had grown into a magnificent German Shepherd whose natural leadership abilities made him the perfect K9 for hostage negotiation situations. His calm authority, learned from protecting Axel during his most vulnerable moments, could de-escalate dangerous situations better than most human negotiators. Bravo specialized in medical emergency response, using his instinctive ability to monitor breathing patterns to locate trapped survivors in collapsed buildings and natural disasters. His weeks of monitoring Axel's respiration had developed into supernatural detection abilities. Charlie became a psychological support specialist for combat veterans with PTSD, using the same emotional intuition he'd shown during Axel's recovery to help soldiers process trauma and find paths to healing. Delta developed into an expert in neurological emergency response, able to detect seizures, cathesis, strokes, and brain injuries before medical equipment could register them. Her ability to monitor Axel's head injury recovery had evolved into life-saving medical detection capabilities, and Echo, the smallest female who had synchronized her heartbeat with Axel's, became a cardiac alert specialist whose presence could literally stabilize heart patients during medical emergencies. But it was their first major deployment together that proved the Brotherhood's true value. The earthquake that hit Northern California in March created a disaster zone that challenged every search and rescue team on the West Coast. A school building had collapsed with 37 children and teachers trapped inside, and traditional rescue methods were failing to locate survivors in the unstable rubble. "We need the Midnight Brotherhood," the incident commander radioed to Axel. "Standard K9 units can't operate safely in this level of structural damage, and we're running out of time." Axel looked at his expanded family: Scout, Ranger, Angel, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo, all grown into magnificent German Shepherds whose bond with each other and their commitment to saving lives had created the most effective rescue unit in the country. "You ready to show them what we learned together?" Axel asked the 8 dogs. Their coordinated response was immediate and perfect, 8 powerful barks that meant mission accepted in perfect unison. The rescue operation that followed would be studied in emergency response schools for decades. Working with the same coordination they'd used to heal Axel, the Brotherhood divided into specialized teams. Scout, Ranger, and Angel used their traditional search and rescue expertise to map safe approach routes through the rubble. Alpha led the team to the most dangerous sections where leadership and calm authority were needed to keep trapped victims from panicking. Bravo and Delta worked together to locate survivors with the most critical medical conditions, using their respiratory and neurological detection abilities to prioritize rescue efforts. Charlie provided psychological support to terrified children who had been trapped for hours in darkness. And Echo performed the most remarkable feat of all. She somehow detected a classroom of 15 children trapped in an air pocket 30 feet below the surface, using cardiac detection abilities that no traditional equipment could match. "I'm getting heartbeats," Echo's behavior communicated to Axel through body language they'd perfected during years of partnership. 15 distinct cardiac signatures, all stable, directly below this position. The rescue of those 15 children took 8 hours of careful excavation, but every child survived because Echo had found them before their air supply ran out. By the end of the operation, the Brotherhood had located 34 of the 37 missing people. 33 survived, the highest success rate in earthquake rescue history. But it was what happened after the rescue that showed how completely the Brotherhood had fulfilled their promise to each other. As the rescued children were being treated by medical teams, several of the young patients showed signs of severe psychological trauma from their hours trapped in darkness. Standard trauma counseling wasn't helping, and some children were becoming increasingly distressed. Without being commanded, Charlie, Delta, and Echo moved among the young patients, providing the same healing presence they'd given Axel during his recovery. Within hours, children who had been inconsolable were sleeping peacefully with German Shepherd guardians by their sides. "They're not just search and rescue dogs," Dr. Jennifer Walsh observed while watching the Brotherhood work with the trauma victims. "They're healers. They understand that rescue isn't complete until the survivors feel safe again." 6 months later, the Brotherhood training program had expanded across the country, teaching other K-9 units the integration of tactical excellence with emotional healing that made the Midnight Brotherhood unique. But the real measure of their success happened every evening at Axel's Montana home, where Emma, now 10 years old and thriving, would sit with all 8 dogs around the fireplace while they made their signature melodic sounds. "You know what I love about our family?" Emma asked Axel one evening while Scout, Ranger, Angel, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo harmonized around them. "What's that, sweetheart?" "We all chose each other. Nobody was born into this family. We all survived something terrible and decided that surviving was better when we did it together." Axel looked around at his chosen family, a daughter who had survived attempted murder, 3 legendary search and rescue dogs who had found their purpose in helping others, 5 formerly orphaned puppies who had grown into heroes while never forgetting that their first mission was loving the man who saved them. "That's the real secret, isn't it?" Axel said, listening to their evening song. "The strongest families aren't the ones connected by blood. They're the ones connected by choice, by shared purpose, and by the promise to never leave anyone behind." 8 magnificent German shepherds and 1 remarkable little girl continued their harmony, filling the Montana cabin with the sound that had once helped heal a broken warrior and now helped heal a broken world. Because sometimes the greatest rescues don't happen in disasters or emergencies. Sometimes they happen in quiet moments around a fireplace, when a family that chose each other remembers that love isn't just about being saved, it's about saving others. And sometimes the most powerful promise isn't spoken with words. It's sung in harmonies that say, "You're safe, you're loved, you're never